Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Intercooler podcast with Dan Prosser and Andrew Frankel, episode 261, and it's a busy one. Lots that we want to talk about. We're going to do a bit of Tesla and Musk, probably a little bit of Formula One. I've also been on a bit of an adventure in my Audi long-termer. But let's start by talking a little bit about us just very briefly, because last week was upgrade week for the Intercooler.
It was.
When we introduced a raft of upgrades. Hopefully you've heard us talk about those before, but it's important that we mention them again. So as of last week, subscribers to the Intercooler, our paying subscribers, can enjoy a package of additional benefits. So they can listen to this weekly podcast completely ad-free. They can listen to a new midweek podcast with you and I called Ask the Intercooler.
Which comes out on Thursday mornings.
On a Thursday. And they can watch our videos on the app and website completely ad-free. And the one that I'm really excited about is subscribers can now listen to our multi-award-winning online car magazine. You can have the articles read to you. Yeah. And I think people are enjoying that so far.
The new Ask the Intercooler podcast, where anybody who subscribes can ask us any question they like, as long as it's faintly connected to cars. And Dan and I will do our best to answer it.
And I think best of all, you can listen to all this stuff on the Intercooler app and website if you want. But I think most people will choose to listen via their chosen podcast app. Yeah. It's quite clever, actually. If you are a subscriber, you can log in, go to your My Account page, click on the menu icon, click on podcasts, and there you'll be able to select your chosen podcast. If you use Spotify, just click the Spotify button. Actually, a couple of the other podcast platforms, the buttons that you will see there, they don't work. They're faults with the podcast platforms, not on our side. It's frustrating, but that's the way it is. Instead, you just have to copy the link underneath the icons and paste that into the podcast app that you choose. We have already emailed out instructions to our existing subscribers. That email went out on Tuesday, the 22nd of April. So go and find that and you can follow the instructions. If anything's not clear, email us and we'll help you out. Now, if you're not yet subscribed, maybe audio articles, maybe this podcast ad-free, maybe the new midweek Ask the Intercooler podcast, maybe all that stuff is enough reason for you to sign up now.
Yeah.
There will be a link in the description, or you can just head to the-intercooler.com and find the subscribe page. If you choose an annual subscription, A, it works out cheaper than a monthly one. B,
quite a lot cheaper.
B, you can take out a 30-day free trial, so try it before you give us any money. And C, if you use coupon code POD20 at checkout, you will get 20% off for the first year. So I think now's the time to subscribe if you haven't already. We do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Let's move on.
Good.
Tesla, Musk. I mean, they've had a shocking earnings report, essentially, haven't they?
Yeah. So as we record this, and this is going to go out next week, so we don't know what the situation will be then. But as we record this, it's actually on the day that Tesla declared its first quarter results. Sales are down in the first quarter 20%, profits down over 70%. Yeah. And this is from a company whose share price has halved since the middle of December. So Tesla is in, by Tesla standards certainly, is in big trouble.
Yeah.
And we hear, don't we, that Musk has now said that he's going to, he hasn't said that he's going, but he said he's going to scale down his activities at Doge and spend more of his time looking after Tesla. I don't know whether Tesla shareholders will regard that as a good or a bad thing, but it's certainly what he thinks needs to be done. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that, actions have consequences. I'm sure that at least some of this is, the rise of competition, and we know that other manufacturers are, doing much better with their EVs than they have done in the past, and it's a much more crowded playing field than it's than it's ever been before. We know also that that Tesla's model lineup is getting old. I mean, the Model Y is still, I think it's the world's best-selling car. Is it just America's? I don't know, but it's an incredible success. But that's, okay, there are upgrades coming to it now, but it's still an old car. The Cybertruck, as I understand it, has absolutely tanked.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they thought that they were going to do 250,000 cars last year. I think they did about 40,000, if you could even call it a car. And so, there are lots and lots of reasons to explain what has happened. But I also think that, I think particularly people who, the early adopters who first got into the Tesla brand because they genuinely thought they were doing the right thing. It was meant to be a very green, progressive brand, run by someone who appeared to be a lifelong, Democrat and, wanted to, do his best to save the world. And now that same person is, doing strange salutes, supporting, far-right German political parties, campaigning for the release of, of violent criminals. And, I just, you can't do that sort of stuff without a certain proportion. I mean, I'm sure there may be some people who just think, well, it's the best car for what I want to do. I love the supercharger network, so we're just going to, press on regardless. But there will also be a lot of people, particularly when they hear about, protests outside dealerships. They hear about, cars.
Yeah, not just protests. Yeah, vandalism and destruction.
And cars being defaced and that sort of thing. I saw somebody posted a picture of a Cybertruck, and someone had in very sort of realistic typeface put a sort of massive Toyota badge across the back of it. If I think so many people bought Teslas because they were the cool car to have.
They were cool for a long time. Yeah.
If Tesla is no longer cool, if Tesla becomes in any way toxic as a brand, that is a massive problem. And I remain to be convinced that the man who is essentially responsible for that toxicity, if it is such a thing, is also the answer to their press, like giving Dracula the keys to the blood bank, isn't it? I don't know, but it remains to be seen. But certainly at the moment, this is the biggest crisis. I mean, Tesla had inevitably a difficult start because it was trying to, what they did in the early years was absolutely incredible. Trying to do a kind of car which had never been done before. As a startup, they made huge mistakes. There were lots of problems with, getting cars into production. There were lots of problems with, quality control. But they do seem to have nailed all that.
Yeah.
And, the Teslas that I have driven have been very convincing examples of that particular art. Combine that with a supercharger network, which is still far and away better than anything else that people who drive EVs like the one you're driving around can regularly have access to. You can. It's an incredibly impressive what Musk and his team achieved, but at the moment, it is being squandered. It appears to be being spoiled to an extent. And I don't know whether Musk is the person to sort that out.
Yeah, you do wonder, don't you, if what Tesla now needs for this next phase of its existence is a steady hand, someone who is going to be less less divisive, let's say.
Yes.
Perhaps a car industry stalwart, someone who's been there and done that. Because Musk has made himself, whether you like the guy or not, there's no doubt that he's alienated himself from half the population, essentially. And that's having consequences right now. And can that be recovered with Musk still at the helm?
Okay, let me spin it another way. I think that Musk is probably more so than any other individual since perhaps Enzo Ferrari, the man is the brand.
Yeah.
I don't know of any car brand which is more associated with, I was about to say its founder, he didn't found Tesla, but with the man who was essentially responsible for building it, than Musk is to Tesla.
Well, apart from the small independents like a Koenigsegg or a Pagani.
Well, of course, yeah, but I'm not.
It's
really
a different
talking
matter,
about,
isn't it?
I'm talking about mainstream global manufacturers. So imagine for a moment, and this won't happen because Musk won't let it happen, because in his head, I'm quite certain that without him, there is no Tesla, and that Tesla couldn't possibly survive without him. But if the man and the reputation he now holds is what, as you say, so many people regard as the reason that they don't want a Tesla anymore, imagine if he did just step down. I think that instantly, in that moment, all that bad feeling, all that division you talk about, all that toxicity, which makes people go and, vandalize dealerships and, write things on cars, I think that just goes away.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people actually hold it against the cars. Why would you? They're inanimate objects. It's the person.
Yeah.
Then you get the question, but, it was Musk's vision, and he is a true visionary who built this company, who created those products in automotive industry times, in the blink of an eye. You take him out of it, and how do you replace that creativity? How does, a steady as you go type CEO come in? I don't know. It's really interesting.
Does Tesla still need that spark, that creativity?
Well, that's another really, really good question.
Yeah. Is it beyond that now? Does it actually need stability?
I mean, it is what they have in something like a Model Y, something like and I use this in a very specific sense, something like their 911, which just needs to be evolved and evolved and evolved, because the genius was the original idea, and maybe Musk has provided that service, and they just need to take that template and develop it, and then maybe you don't need to be a visionary to do that. I mean, it would be very interesting to see what would happen to Tesla's share price if Musk left tomorrow.
Yeah.
I suspect it would fall, actually, because I think there are still so many people who regard the two as indivisible and can't imagine one without the other. But it is...
I think it would fall, but it might in the long term be the best thing for the business.
I think so much of it also depends on what Musk does in future. If he continues with this, in my view, highly inadvisable stuff that he's been doing, that's about as mildly as I can put it, then I think it is really, really, potentially even existentially problematic for Tesla. If he actually, wakes up, smells the coffee a bit and went, oh, maybe I slightly overcooked it there, and just somehow tries to rehabilitate himself in the eyes of his customers and also all those prospects who, might otherwise, because it's not just the people who got Teslas. It's all those people who quite like the idea of a Tesla but don't really want, their mate saying, what, you bought a car from that man? What were you thinking? You bought a car from a man who holds those views.
Would it stop you if you really wanted one?
Yeah.
Would it stop you?
Yeah, I wouldn't buy a Tesla. It's awful because...
I would.
You'd buy one?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't.
If it was exactly the car that I wanted.
Okay. I find some of the causes that he has supported, and I find it so utterly anathema to everything that I believe in.
Yeah.
I couldn't be responsible. I know he probably doesn't need it, but I couldn't be responsible for putting money in his pocket. Now, that's and in many ways that's a really flawed position to have, because he's not the first car company boss to have some highly unorthodox views.
Goodness knows.
But I don't know. I think it's because, you can't really blame the Ford of today for the fact that Henry Ford was an anti-Semite. But, the thing is that Musk is there now. And so, it is, the link is still there. It is still current. It is still direct. And no, I wouldn't choose to. I hope, but what it wouldn't do is affect my judgment of their cars. If Tesla, they probably won't be wanting to much after this podcast, but if Tesla wanted to send me an updated Model Y, I have no qualms at all about, assessing that the same way I would any other car. But no, I wouldn't spend my own money on one.
If you bought a Tesla 2-3 years ago,
would I sell it?
Yeah. Or just get one of those stickers on the back saying, "I bought this before we realised Musk was," whatever they say.
No, I wouldn't do that. I'd either wear it or get rid of it.
Yeah.
I think I'd sell it.
Would you?
Yeah. I don't want that association. I am probably, I think that, I don't think I am, but I think a lot of people listening to this will think that I'm taking myself wildly too seriously. And that, this stuff that Musk does is just silly, but actually isn't, in the great run of things, massively important. I don't know, but to me it is, I don't buy cars, on the principles of their founders. But at the same time, I think, sometimes you have to just ask yourself what you feel comfortable with. And I wouldn't feel comfortable with one.
It's just... What's really odd about Musk is that Gavin Green wrote an article. He wrote one of his regular stories for us. It's called The Real Influencers, where he looks at these industry titans from the present day, from the past, and he does a really robust, broad-minded, rigorous sort of profile of these people. And he pointed out in his story about Musk that he actually endorsed Joe Biden in 2020.
Yes.
So what's happened in 4 years?
Joe Biden in 2020 and every Democrat nominee going way back as possible. What's happened? You have to think it's political, don't you? And by that I don't mean political in terms of, he's changed his political convictions.
No.
I think he thought it was what suited his interests best.
To his advantage, yeah.
He thought that, that Trump would basically get rid of the competition.
Yeah, and reinvigorate industry and business.
Yeah.
He believed that, didn't he?
Apparently. Apparently. So, yes, I mean, to me, it is quite clearly a commercial decision that he made. In much the same way that, that Boris Johnson, he famously wrote two letters passionately both supporting and, what's the word?
Opposing Brexit.
And opposing Brexit. And I think that Musk just took the view that this was going to be best for his own business interests and did that. I don't think that it's got anything to do with his political convictions at all, because, as you said, up until then, all the evidence has been that he's been a lifelong Democrat. And he's actually said I can't remember, I've written the story once, but he has actually called Trump some fairly rude things over the years. So, read into that what you will.
Yeah, it's all very odd, isn't it? It's all very odd. And, well, we'll see what happens. Maybe... sometimes I get the sense with him that he just doesn't care about the results, about revenues, profits. Do you remember when he took over Twitter, X, he told all the advertisers who had pulled their money to F off?
Yes.
Publicly told them that. Mm-hmm. So is it just that he feels invincible because he's so wealthy anyway, you just can't touch the man?
Yes.
Well, we're never going to get to the bottom of this, are we?
I think he is one of these. He is one of those people, and you get this particularly with people who have become so successful. They have so many people hanging onto their shirt tails. Nobody will say boo to him. Nobody in his employ is ever going to turn around and go, Elon, that's unacceptable. You cannot make that gesture. You cannot say that thing. You cannot support that cause. And so you end up believing your own bullshit because nobody ever tells you otherwise.
Yeah. It's bizarre. Let's see what happens. Let's see if he can steady the ship and get those sales and profits back up.
I mean, I hope so for all the hundreds of thousands of people who depend on him for their livelihoods.
Yeah. All the good, decent people who have worked at Tesla.
Yeah.
Be it a short time or a long time.
And all those people, who bought Teslas, because they're good cars, but also because they thought they were doing the right thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move it on. So we're 5 races into the 2025 Formula One season. I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed.
Because we thought we were going to have the season of all seasons.
And we spoke it up as much as anyone.
Yeah, but I'm not disappointed. Well, okay. I think it's still really interesting.
There has been intrigue. It hasn't been terrible, but honestly, I've really hoped that we'd have 4 different winning teams by now. Because that's roughly what we had at the end of last season, wasn't it? And you sort of assume at the end of a rule cycle that the penultimate season flows into the
everybody
last
ends
season.
up on the same level, and off you go. I think I think McLaren are doing us a huge favour in having Lando apparently slipping up. Oscar, I mean, Karun has written a piece for us, which you can find on the Intercooler website and app, which is just called Oscar ! Going into this man's background, and I think possibly saying maybe we shouldn't be too surprised because his pre-Formula One history was absolutely stellar. He won everything. But actually, I mean, what this has taught me again, and it's he is Prost-like in his approach. You don't win. You might win races, but you don't win world championships by being a tenth quicker than your teammate. You win world championships by being the same speed, or maybe even a tenth slower, but never slipping up.
Yeah.
Never being flustered, just knocking it out lap after lap, race after race, totally unflustered, and that is, it is a temperament, isn't it, which he has. I think that Lando, in those 6 races, including the sprint, has made mistakes in qualifying in 4 of them.
Yeah,
Oscar, none. That's the difference.
I'm not surprised to see Oscar doing so well. I think I'm not some driver talent guru, but I think I could see it in him quite early on. I remember saying to you on this podcast that his debut season I thought was the best since Hamilton. He certainly won a sprint, didn't he? And had several podiums that year. And I could see the killer instinct in him. Certainly that first lap overtake on his teammate Lando at Monza. It's decisive, and he's done it several times since to plenty of other drivers.
Well, I mean, he's done it twice to Lewis, hasn't he? I think he did it in Melbourne, round the outside, somewhere you're not meant to go round the outside. He did it again in Saudi Arabia, didn't he?
Yeah, that was a DRS one, so it's a bit different. But
but
no one else was doing that.
To go round the outside, I mean, I don't think Lewis saw it coming. Maybe he did.
I think you just can't do anything about it. If someone's going to be that ballsy, you put them in the wall or you let them go through, I think. But I think he's a fantastic driver, but it's his temperament that I really like. I often think that there are, if we can categorize human temperaments in one of 2 categories, there's the hot-headed driver and there's the very cool, calm, collected driver. And I often see the very hot-headed types in Formula One getting so worked up that their performance just plummets, whereas the very cool, calm, collected ones like Oscar Piastri can just deliver even when they're up against it.
Where would you put Max in those 2 categories? Because I think he started as one and is becoming the other.
Do you think he's becoming hot-headed? No,
I think the other way around. I think he was hot-headed, and I think that he is now.
Unless something's not gone his way, then he just erupts again.
Yeah. But he's a hothead and he's won the last 4 world titles. So
I'm not saying one's better than the other necessarily, but you can see some drivers are able to keep their cool and stay focused, and others seem to get rattled.
Who would you rather go for a night on the lash with, Oscar or Lando?
Well, Lando's just more of a character, isn't he? But do you know us?
It's Lando all day long, isn't it?
Yeah, but as someone who himself can be quite introverted, I bet Oscar's a great lad when you get to know him. He just doesn't present the way that Lando does.
You may be right. I've not heard anyone say that.
No.
But maybe that says more about me than it does about Piastri. I don't know.
No, but I think, and it's no surprise that Lando's the sort of fan favourite.
No. And I love the way, I mean, I don't think he should do it because I think he is providing his opposition, Oscar in particular, with the tools with which to further get inside his head. But I love his honesty. I love the fact that he cannot do anything but say, I messed up. He described himself as an effing idiot, didn't he? Which, and I just, I can't remember another driver with that level of sort of lacerating honesty coming out and talking like that. And I just find it immensely impressive and endearing, but at the same time, he probably shouldn't be doing it.
I just think he makes himself very vulnerable.
Yes.
Which is in many ways a very admirable thing to do. It really is.
But it doesn't win world championships.
I'm not sure it does.
No.
I'm not sure it does.
I'm very sure it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who are you backing?
This year now, Oscar. And I wouldn't have said that at all. So I got that completely wrong. I thought that this was going to be the year that Oscar proved himself to be absolutely at the top of the good driver division, but not even at the bottom of the great driver division. And I thought it might be the year that Lando proved himself to be one of the greats. That said, goodness sake, we are barely a quarter of the way through the season.
Not yet a quarter.
So what I want to hear your view on, because my view of Lando and his prospects have changed. How are you feeling about Lewis now? Because I think you thought that he was going to do a number on Charles, didn't you?
No, I never said that. Come on.
Okay, I'm being slightly cheeky.
I said that once he was comfortable in the car, I thought he could be competitive with Charles and over the course of a season outscore him. That's obviously not going to happen this season because it's taking him so long to become comfortable. I think if he started the year comfortable in the car, confident in the car, then absolutely I'd back him to be certainly at least competitive with Charles.
So, okay. We went into this season, didn't we? Thinking, well, he had a bad 2024 in the Mercedes, and George absolutely had the upper hand for most of the season, because there was a particular thing about that car which he couldn't really get on with.
The curious thing, 2/3 of the way through the season, Lewis was leading George in the championship.
Was he? Okay. Was that because strange things had happened, or was he?
Not really. They both had misfortune. Lewis had an engine failure and had to take a penalty with a new engine. So it was fairly even. Lewis was actually quite consistent. He raced well last season until the final third, when it really did crumble for him.
But the point being is that, is that Mercedes, if you take the view that his struggle maybe only towards the end of last season was because he couldn't get on with his car. Well, here's another car that he appears to be struggling to get on with. And I wonder how long a person who is in his, 19th season? Yes, it is. 07 was his first, wasn't it?
Wow.
In Formula One, can credibly continue to say, it's because I was with my previous team for 12 years and this car doesn't drive like that car. At that level, should you not just, you don't hear Sainz saying that about the Williams, do you?
No, but what happened in the China sprint?
Well, who knows?
This is the weird thing.
It's really, really strange, isn't it?
This is the weird thing.
It's really strange. I don't know. I don't know what happened in the China sprint. I have no ready explanation for that. And also, as I said, we are barely a quarter of the way through the season, and things could all turn. I mean, in fact, I actually said, to sort of slightly shoot my own fox here, is that I don't think that we could draw any meaningful conclusions about Lewis's time at Ferrari until the circus got to Europe. And as we record this, we still have Miami to come, and only then does it then get. So I think
and then it's Monaco.
Yeah.
I think. And so, Miami and Monaco are not going to be helpful for him.
Probably not.
So I think it's Barcelona, it's Austria, it's Silverstone, it's those circuits. Okay. Once he's had a good crack at a few of those, there has to be some results. But it's just so odd that he was able to put it on pole and comfortably win that sprint in a car that since then he's hated.
No, so he's clearly comfortable. Okay, so I think we have to sort, because it was a sprint and because they go about sprint racing in a completely different way to the one that they go about a normal race, a normal Grand Prix. I think you have to slightly set that aside. I think, and I've said this before, and it gives me no pleasure in saying it, I think that the situation is, I think you can go on blaming your tools for as long as you like, but ultimately I think that all drivers have to accept that there comes a time in their career trajectory when they're just not as good as they used to be. And when you are absolutely the best of your era, and some would say the best of all time, but I don't buy that for any driver because I don't think you can compare across generations. When the peak is so high, I suspect even if you come off that by 10%, I think it's just a big distance to drop. And I think that what we are seeing, I'm afraid, is Lewis now being a really good Formula One driver, when once he was, one of the greatest there has been. And he's up against a driver who is, an absolutely outstanding talent, and given the age that he is, and for no other reason, is probably still getting better. Because, what is Charles now, 27?
He's 27.
Yeah. I think modern Formula One drivers tend to peak in their early 30s.
I think they do. I still think that last season there were moments where we saw the best of Lewis.
Yes, and of course I'm sure he will still be able to do it from time to time.
Yeah. I think it comes down to that man and machine thing. And clearly he is the biggest factor in that equation. And it's on him, but also the people that he works with, to get that relationship to where it needs to be. Yeah. And perhaps he will still get there. The bigger issue, perhaps, is that he just cannot really get on with this current rule set. He can't. We know that these ground effect cars reward that Jenson Button, George Russell, Oscar Piastri kind of smooth driving style, and he just doesn't have that.
So can I put a finger up? Max.
I know, that's the sort of anomaly, isn't it?
Max. Max is absolutely not. Max is a chuck it in and sort it out merchant, isn't he?
Well, he is, but perhaps they're different cars, aren't they?
The most successful driver in this current generation is the one who least subscribes to the rules by which we naturally expect to reward, those drivers who, as you say, drive, like Alain Prost.
Yeah.
In a very smooth and...
Yeah, but I mean, Red Bull was the team that mastered these regulations a couple of years ago, not so much these days. So they're very different cars. But I still think that once Hamilton gets some of the more conventional tracks beneath his belt, I do think he will settle into the car a little bit more. Whether or not it ever allows him to win a Grand Prix this season or be anything like the driver we know he can be.
Let's not forget, he won 2 races last year.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, okay, one was gifted to him.
Was it though?
What, the one where George got disqualified?
It was sort of gifted to him.
It was gifted to him. Yeah, absolutely.
I disagree with that, but carry on.
Okay. But no, nevertheless, he has won. He has won as recently as last season. And I think that goodness sake, if Pastor Maldonado can win a Grand Prix, then Lewis Hamilton still can. So I absolutely think that there are circumstances, and you may also find, that he wins without any need to qualify at all, because he's just on that particular day the best driver out there on the track. I absolutely believe that if he's at a circuit which he feels completely at home in, and it's a circuit which happens to suit the characteristics of the car, I think he's certainly good enough. I'm not saying that for a moment that Lewis Hamilton has suddenly turned into an also-ran. I don't believe that at all. I just don't think that he is, if you take the absolute cream of the cream of, the modern Grand Prix drivers, normally, always, it would always be in Lewis and Max, tussling it out for the top. I don't think there's anybody out there who credibly now thinks that Lewis today, in his 40s, is as good a driver as Max Verstappen.
So
and then when there was a time when he absolutely was.
But it's give him a car that he's confident and comfortable in, and he's back up to the best of them. I'm convinced of that. Okay. I am convinced of that, and maybe we'll see it. Maybe the 2026 rule set just fundamentally suit him better.
I mean, I've said this before as well. There is nobody who'd be more pleased to find out that's correct than me.
Yeah,
I'm a huge fan, and I think it's great, but I hope it more than I believe it.
I know you, for whatever reason, put the China sprint aside, but for me, that says that when he is confident in the car, it's still there. It's still there. But I'm a fan, and I find myself always sort of searching for the positives. And actually, being a Hamilton fan for the last year and a half has been grim, particularly Saturdays. They've just been grim.
And also, I think where he is unlucky, and this is nobody's fault, is to be in an era where qualifying has never been, your qualifying position has never been more important than it is now. Both because of the characteristics of the cars and how difficult it is to overtake and to follow, but also by just how and I guess you get this at the end of rule sets, just how competitive it is. If you are, if you're 2/10 off, that could be 3 rows of the grid, couldn't it?
Yeah, it's stunning.
2/10,
so close.
2/10 is approximately the period of time it takes to blink your eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
As Martin Brundle says, a Formula One car travels quite a long distance in 2/10 of a second.
It does. Well, the final comment then on Hamilton, or really the Ferrari. The Ferrari's not a good car so far this season.
No.
Charles did a mega job to put it on the podium in Saudi Arabia, but even with that, this has been his least competitive start to a season in his Ferrari years.
It's yet another, and we've seen this so many times over the years, haven't we, where Ferrari is perceived to be, Ferrari were actually the strongest team at the end of last year.
Yeah.
They didn't quite catch, but they came within a race of catching McLaren for the constructors. And then they appeared to have, won the winter testing battle. And then they come to the season and it's not there.
Yeah. It's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
It's frustrating.
We've seen it happen so many times for Ferrari. And goodness me, wouldn't it be, how wonderful would it be if Lewis Hamilton were to win a world championship in a Ferrari? I mean, that would just be like everybody's Christmases all come at once.
It's a great story, isn't it? I absolutely appreciate it's the longest of long shots, but
this season it absolutely
this season it's not going to happen.
No.
But we do know
next season we just don't know. I mean, I don't think it is the longest of long shots. I mean, okay, I think it is a long shot because I can't see how he, over the course of a season, I can see races, I see quite a lot of races, but I can't see it over a course of a season how he's going to beat Charles. So let us say...
But that's because you fundamentally believe he's lost some of that edge.
I do, yes.
Yeah, see, I don't. That's where I disagree with you.
Yeah, well, fair enough. There are no rights or wrongs here. But nevertheless, if they produce for 2026 a car like Red Bull had in 2023, Charles is world champion. It has to be. I think if you look, I mean, honestly, I admire your positivity, and I completely understand.
Yeah.
Why you think the way that you do, but I think I just try to look at these things, and I actually try to park my positivity because I sort of feel the need to. It gets in the way of what the maybe sometimes inconvenient truth is, and for me, the inconvenient truth is he's just not as quick as he used to be.
So I think in 2023 he was the second best driver. He finished third in the championship, quite a close second to Sergio Perez. Perez was in that fiercely dominant car, the most dominant Formula One car there's ever been.
Yes.
If you don't finish second to the world champion in that car, your teammate world champion, you're a mug, right? So you have to finish second in that car. So actually finishing a close third,
and he did that
is
season,
a better performance.
Although George outdrove him in 22, he did outdrive George in 23.
Yeah. That's not that long ago.
No, it's not. But time waits for no man.
We'll see. I mean, I understand. I'm a fan, and I just feel a bit sort of gutted by it all.
On a related subject, do you think that put in the right car, Fernando could still win a championship 20 years after his last?
I mean, when the Aston was competitive, he was looking good. Was that 2023 or 4?
Not
23.
23, yeah.
23. He was on the podium several times, looked racy. It's hard to get a read on how competitive he is these days because his teammate is not up to it. No. So, I don't know. I mean, I take your point.
I would just be amazed. And again, I think that Alonso is, of all the current drivers, the man whose talent is disproportionate to the number of championships that he's won.
Yeah.
I think if I look at him and how extraordinary he was at his height, that is a person who should be a 4 or 5 time world champion, not a double world champion.
But he's come very close to being a 5-time world champion.
Exactly. But again, I just don't think that. I mean, what is he now? 43?
Around that, yeah.
Yeah. Don't know. Hard to see.
Gosh, we kind of got caught up in Formula One there, didn't we? We don't have much time left, so the last thing that I want to talk about is my Audi long-termer, my S e-tron GT.
Yeah. You still have it?
I still have it, yeah. Not for a whole lot longer.
Do you think Audi have forgotten about it?
Don't say that. They might be listening. So last week, I had to drive it from home in Bristol up to Cumbria, to M Sport in Cumbria. It's precisely it's actually 300.1 miles there and back. No, sorry, there.
Yeah.
And I looked at it, 300 miles, that's more than the Audi can do on a single charge. And I almost rang you and said, I'm coming to pick up your 5 Series plug-in.
You did say that, because, but then you said, no, I'm going to be brave.
Yeah.
But even that conversation, even the fact that it occurred to you to have that conversation, that you thought, actually, I've got a mate who's got a car which is just going to spare me a lot of, arseache. Yeah. The very fact that that thought popped into your head
says a lot. Yeah,
says a lot.
Okay, but the reality is, so I left with a full battery, and it was showing just under 300 miles. It might have got there, but then you're pulling up with 0% charge and hoping that you can find a charger. So it's silly. So I charged for 23 minutes on the way up, quite near the destination. Mm-hmm. And on the way back, I charged for about another 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So something like 50 minutes in total. And I was stopping to get food anyway. And what I've realised is for those very long journeys where you want to stop for a reasonable amount of time anyway, to stretch your legs, go to the toilet, find something to eat.
I never do.
Okay, well, I would. Yeah. And so to stop and plug in for 20 minutes is no hardship for me.
No.
And so actually, I don't think the return journey took really any longer than it would have done in your car, your petrol plug-in hybrid.
But you say that having done the return journey, what you didn't know when you set off for that return journey, or indeed the one up, was that you'd have a good experience.
So on that, it actually worked out perfectly well. It was no inconvenience at all. But on the way up there, I had the choice of going to T-Bay Services, which is a beautiful sort of farm shop one. It's like Gloucester Services on the M5. Yes. It's lovely. Or the one a few miles further south, which is, it turns out, a total dump. Horrible place. But the horrible dump of a place had 350 kilowatt chargers.
Yes.
Lovely T-Bay, only 150 kilowatt. So I had to go to the horrible dump of a place where I had a terrible burger, right? Mm. And then on the way back, I did stop at T-Bay and I managed to plug in. If I'd been 20 minutes later, and by the time I was unplugging to leave, cars were queuing up to charge.
At which stage you would have got 30 kilowatts or something, wouldn't you, rather than 150?
Or if I even managed to get one without waiting half an hour.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that's the point.
So even when it's good, it's not as good.
So, there must be lots of people who think to themselves, I'm just going to come off a service station earlier than the one that I know I can easily reach. Because if there's a charger there, I'll take it. Because if I go to the one which I can easily reach but can't get to the one beyond that, and they're all full, or I'm only getting 30 kilowatts, I'm in a load of strife here. Yeah. So that cuts your range again, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah, it does. So it's not quite the freedom of the open road where you go where you want as you want. If you plan it and you're quite rigorous about it, it can be absolutely fine, but it's still more of a nuisance than we're used to.
Yes. How's the car otherwise?
The car's brilliant. Comfortable on a long trip like that, relaxing. I think the car's fantastic.
Good seats?
Yeah, good seats. I really like the car. And well, what I've said several times is that for normal, just getting about the place locally, I would rather be in an EV because I just like the quiet, the smooth, the performance. Absolutely. I like all that stuff. For everything else, for the very long journeys, and certainly, no question, for having fun in a car, it's got to be ICE. It simply has to be for me. Okay,
so I'm sort of getting to a moment of clarity with this issue. I'm driving a 530e, BMW 530e wagon at the moment, plug-in hybrid. It will do a genuine 60 miles on electric power, which is actually the fast. I live in the Wye Valley. We're in a studio in Bristol today. It'll get me from home to here and back again without the crankshaft spinning a single revolution. And the more I think about that, the more I think that actually what you need is an EV which will do 200 miles, 150 miles, and then on top of that, you have an ICE engine which will do another 150 miles. So you've got your range of 350 miles. You never have any range anxiety. You spend almost all your time in an EV. You're not carrying around enormous amounts of battery weight. What I'm effectively talking about is an EV with a range extender. Otherwise known as the idea BMW had over a decade ago with the i3.
Yeah.
That to me, because if the 530e, so it's got a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine in it, which I think puts out about 180 horsepower by itself. If it had a 1.5-litre 3-cylinder engine, which put out 130 horsepower, that wouldn't trouble me in the least. Because it would still get to where I need to go at the speed I wanted to go there. And if I could double or triple that range to 120, 180 miles an EV, basically the engine would hardly ever come on. It would only ever come on when I really needed it. And it would mean like journeys that the one you've just described, there is no range anxiety. You have a lighter car. Because you haven't got an enormous battery, which is required to get the car to do 300 miles. You have the security. To me, you have all the benefits and none of the drawbacks. And nobody is making that car at the moment.
No, it doesn't exist.
Nobody is making it because BMW had that idea and it didn't work out because to me it was an idea of absolute genius which came to market before market was ready for it. And that is, if I was a car manufacturer and I wanted to steal a march on the opposition, that is the car I'd be building. I would be building a car which is predominantly EV, but which had a meaningful ICE range on top. So basically the reverse of what I got, which is a car which is essentially ICE with a bit of battery. I'd do it the other way around.
And you'd want the engine connected to the wheels?
Completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what I've sort of decided... Okay, so listen, it's no great surprise that I've enjoyed driving about the place in a £100,000 Audi, right? No. It's a lovely, big executive car. What I have realised is that for me, an EV should be a little electric city car, a little efficient, compact, affordable city car. That's how an EV would really fit into my life.
A Renault 5.
A Renault 5, exactly.
Or an A290.
Yeah, exactly that sort of thing. Yeah, but anyway, the e-tron GT, it does continue to impress. But it was almost daunting setting off on a 600-mile round trip in an electric car, and actually it turned out to be mostly fine. But it could quite easily have been a lot worse. And
the point is, you don't know that when you leave.
Yeah.
And so you have to factor in all that extra time. So in the end, you end up sitting on your backside, either because it's taking a long time to charge or because you got to where you need to go and you've arrived an hour early because it hasn't been a nightmare. So you still end up sitting on your backside somewhere. It's still wasting time.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it's a good point. It is. Okay, well, listen, let's wrap that one up there. I will just remind you all that if you haven't yet subscribed, now's a great time to do so because of all these additional benefits that we spoke about at the top of the show. And if you head to the link in the description or just go to the-intercooler.com, find the subscribe page, choose an annual sub because that gives you a 30-day free trial, and you can use coupon code POD20 to get 20% off for the first year. Please do that, and in return, we'll be back again next week.
Bye.